Are you surprised by that result on the poll?
I'm not surprised by that result. I've worked a lot with clients who just starting out, and for them HR processes and practices and is not crucial at that stage of their business. However, I would really encourage all founders to start thinking in the future, what's going to happen in my business in the next 18 to 24 months, and start planning and preparing around that.
Great. Yeah, so I know that you have prepared some slides for us to share information so that we can both see and listen to you. So I see there was a little glitch there on Kael's side. Kael Venter is the webinar host. By the way, my name is Christoph Westhuizen, and I'm from the Entrepreneurial Planning Institute hosting the webinar. And Kael is helping with the production issues there. So Kael is just setting up. It looks like there was a little glitch on his side there because everything was working just now. And as technology does, at the last moment, it does something to you. So there we are. Kael is back on with us. So if you can just go through the slides, Kael, that we get to the point where Cynthia is ready to speak about her topic. Okay, there we are. So sorry for that glitch. But Cynthia, so you can present some things for us, and then we can have a discussion, or if there are points that people want to raise, they can do that in the text chat too. Okay. But you've been assisting a lot of small businesses, and I've learned a few things. So I'm looking forward to, as a generalist, as someone that's not focusing specifically on HR, I'm looking forward to learn from you today, so that I can support my clients better too.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity and the privilege to share and learn with everyone today.
Cool.
Okay, so my presentation for today is really, like you have already mentioned, it's going to be based on my own experience and what I found works for clients in the small to medium sized businesses. So I'm going to cover today the HR value chain, culture, recruitment, selection, onboarding, legislation, record keeping, HR systems, and ongoing needs assessment and realignment. And I will clarify as I'm going through how it all links together. So my intention is really to provide you with a broad overview of what I found is really helpful for small businesses to already start thinking about and having in place in their business. Okay, we move on. Okay, so shall we move on to the HR? So the HR value chain really just covers, it covers HR processes from the time an employee or a founder of a business wants to start, has a sense that they can't continue doing everything by themselves and they need to hire specific resources. So from the time you attract an employee to the stage where you get them to perform, and either they move on to another role within your business or they exit the business for various reasons. So I'm going to talk briefly around this throughout the day. Throughout the webinar today. So how you would go about from attracting, motivating, engaging, developing, retaining, and getting your employees to the stage where they can perform and deliver a result. Okay. Shall we move on? So for me, what I found is that's really fundamental and creates a foundation for any business is their company culture. And I always encourage the founder or the CEO of the business to really start thinking already, what is my company culture going to be? What does it look like? What is unique about my business? And what do I want to deliver at the end of the day to my client? So if I want my customer to have a really wow experience, how would I build that already in my business? So my employees, prospective employees, also start feeling and connecting to that wow experience, and it becomes really clear to them. And it starts off with you understanding what makes you unique, what makes you special, and what is the outcome that you want to achieve, what does it connect to in terms of your purpose and your mission. and start to list your own values. And when you list your values, list also what do you think are the behaviors that people would see that's connected to your values. And I encourage CEOs to start thinking around, we want to have as much diversity because we can leverage of diversity. Diversity in thinking, diversity in creativity, innovation, and the various other aspects of diversity. But also think about and be very clear around the fact that you cannot have a diversity of values. So if integrity and honesty is really critical for you and for your business, that should be a non-negotiable. And as you're growing your team, connect with how do I create trust in my team? So how do I create a shared vision? How do I create trust so that people know what they need to deliver? I trust in them and they trust in me. It becomes part of our culture. And from there, you ensure that there's a sense of commitment and there's accountability. It's really important that you hold people accountable for what they need to deliver. And they have a commitment to what it is that they want to also achieve as part of serving and being an employee or a team member in your business. And what I've also found that's really important is make culture a daily habit. I've often found employees say, culture and values is just a poster on the wall. So really, as leadership of a business, you want culture to come from who you are as a person, and make sure that you're looking at your business. How is my culture manifesting in my business? What do I need to do differently? So have a check-in with yourself around culture. So I'm going to now talk about what are some of the typical ways that you would attract, recruit, and retain top talent. Typically, there's traditional ways that you would source talent in a business. And for a startup, I'm going to also share with you some other ways you can get in new staff or recruit employees. So it's important to get really clear about what the job description is. You want employees that are going to be agile and adaptable, because a role in any startup or new business can change in a few months. So be clear and specific about what the activities, and make it really simple as possible. Now there's opportunities to advertise, not just the traditional ways of advertising, but you can advertise on social media, and then conduct competency-based interviews and adaptability tests. So I'll share a little bit more around how you can go about doing that, okay? Can we move on? Okay, so just move back to the previous slide for me, please. Okay, so some ways of attracting applicants. I always encourage startups to start thinking differently. So think about where are the places you can attract through your investors, through your networks, and think about, can you have an interesting talk where you have people with specific skills, whether it's engineers or IT specialists, where people can come and share their views, and that way you can learn about who they are as people. So one of the challenges you will find a lot of founders saying, I don't have the funding to attract people with the specific talents and skills. So there you want to think about, what can I sell in my company? So sell your company, sell your vision and your mission, and where you're going, where you're taking your business to. So that way you would attract people who want to deliver as part of a goal, who want to grow. The wonderful thing about working in a small business is that you get to be very flexible. So think about flexibility, resilience, adaptability are really important traits you want to look for in potential candidates or new team members. So you want to, when you're interviewing, also consider those factors. Okay, can we move on? Can we move on to the next? Okay, so when you go through your selection process, you can have a typical competency-based interview, but also I've recently, yesterday, I've had one of my clients say to me, we interviewed a fantastic client for a marketing role. We had her in the role and then she did not deliver. So sometimes people can perform really well in an interview and then they don't deliver in the actual role itself. So what I always suggest is, if it's possible, get the potential candidate to come into your business and work with them a little while for a day or two, a couple of hours. That helps you to see how they work and get a sense of whether there's a fit. Also, in your interviews, use other ways. So have assessments or tests, have them audition for a role, get them to be practical. So write up if it's a program that they need to do or an event, so ask them to write up processes for you. So that way you get a sense of really how they work, and that then reduces your cost and the stress that you go through in terms of making a wrong decision when you're hiring. Okay, so as I shared before, have an elevator pitch, practice sharing transparency, because people want to know what are your challenges, and they won't be faced by the challenges if they're the right people. And that helps you to get in the right people who see challenges as opportunities to grow and desire to be part of a learning culture. And also share with them how you see the role changing and evolving, and see whether they're genuinely committed to doing that. Okay. And we move on. Okay. So it's important, once you've hired an employee, to also ensure that you have onboarding in place. So you'll find a lot of small businesses will say to you, we don't have the money and the funding for onboarding. But onboarding does not need to happen immediately. You can do onboarding as a process over 6 months. So I've just listed some of the key aspects of onboarding that need to take place. So ensure that when you bring someone on board, they understand what is expected of them. They have the resources to deliver. You are clear around what are the expectations around their behaviors, values, and policies, and how to and try to see if it's possible that you can pair them with someone who's already been working with you, so that way they get integrated into the culture. They have someone they can talk to, and then they can start building and designing relationships. And it's really important that you spend time on this. A lot of founders or business owners feel they don't necessarily have the time. But this is really important, because ultimately your business is going to be run and managed by other people. They become ambassadors for your product or the service that you want to deliver. So it's really important that you spend the time building a relationship with them, imparting relevant knowledge and skills, and you can do this over a period of time. So also what I have found, I recently had a company who grew massively. They onboarded or they recruited and hired 150 people within a 3 months period, but they failed to make sure they had processes in place. So have an employee file in place, ensure you have the proper contracts, you conduct the necessary checks, because later on, you don't want to find out that this person was actually a criminal, because that can just be a reputational risk for your business. So ensure you have all the proper processes in place, and then set objectives for the probation period. So probation period is really a learning curve for employees as they adjust to the environment and understand what they need to deliver. But it's important to be clear about that and start setting it up front from the stage that you onboard the employee. Okay, so what's important also is to create awareness around the different legislation and the compliance that the different legislation requires. So the Employment Equity Act ensures that that it monitors unfair discrimination in the working environment, and it also allows you to employ people on the basis of potential and to proactively or positively discriminate by hiring people who are from designated groups. So whether they have a disability or they're female or they're African, Indian, or colored, you can then you can progressively think around your business and employ people. So the Employment Equity Act for small businesses, the minute you start to get to 50 employees and above, then you need to then start reporting into the Department of Labor around how you're assessing barriers to employment within your organization, and how you're proactively embracing diversity and bringing in more people who are from designated groups. So basic conditions of employment prescribe certain minimum conditions of employment which must be applied. So this really just covers your terms and conditions of employment, which also forms part of your contract. And all of this information is really accessible on the Department of Labor website. And they also make some stipulations for small businesses who want to pay below the minimum wage for the first 12 months of employment. Okay. And the Labor Relations Act also governs unfair and fair discrimination and processes and procedures, especially around conduct in the workplace. It's really important also that, I've spoken to this before, that you make sure that you have record keeping. So you can have an employee file, and I also encourage the clients that I work with to create online files, because this just makes it so much easier to access information. So if you can scan and whatever you have on email, etc., put them in a folder under the employee's name and have subfolders. It just makes it a lot easier. If you have a disciplinary inquiry, a performance review, etc., that you have all your information in place, and that then prevents and mitigates any risk, for example, going to CCMA. Okay, so also quickly, there are various HR systems, and I know in the beginning it's probably not relevant, but where you suddenly find your business rapidly going, like for example, with my client who then started to have, who employed 150 people in a 3-month period, they were using Excel to do their payroll, etc. And that was just really wasting a lot of time, and it's prone to human error. So there are various systems that you can use that make your life a lot easier, and encourage your businesses to start looking at payroll functions. There's systems where you can bring in performance management, you can have analytics that just make life a lot easier. And just to end up with, like I said earlier on, small startups and smaller companies, they're very agile in the beginning. So what you want to do is make sure you monitor, even when it comes to your culture, ensure that you're monitoring what's happening in your business on a monthly basis. What are your turnover figures? What's the absenteeism? What is happening in your business? And how then do you realign? And also, ensure if you're having a learning culture, how are people learning? How are they growing? How are you becoming a manager? Because as much as entrepreneurs feel like they don't want to become a manager, as their business grows, management and leadership becomes particularly important as you're growing your business. That's my sharing.
Yeah, no, that's a big mouthful.
Yes.
I'm sure there are a few questions. So by the way, anyone in the room can pose a question at any point in time. The best is to click the Q&A button. There's not much activity in the chat room today, so we may even pick it up there. I was specifically impressed with Cynthia, with the way that you clearly set out it's kind of like a process of making sure. So we think the problem starts when we end up at the CCMA, but it actually starts somewhere much earlier. But by the way, you didn't spend much time on that, and that is kind of like when an advisor is called in a lot of instances, it is when that crisis is happening. Are there perhaps examples of we've got one example in the room here today in the form of Meshack that will share his story with us just now. That comes to mind of a business that has been able to turn that around, where they were at the CCMA a lot, and you helped them that they're not at the CCMA anymore, and what they did to achieve that.
So most businesses are quite scared of CCMA. So what I would encourage them to do is make sure you have clear policies and procedures in place, and also educate and empower your line management. So I would advise or even spend time with line managers explaining the processes. For example, you cannot simply go, I don't like this employee, I'm tired of how they're performing, so I'm just going to fire them. And then you land up at a case at CCMA. So I have one example of that actually with a small business, where the leader of the business was really frustrated and expressed his frustration with the employee. And the employee was then decided to leave and went to CCMA. So I had to have the conversation with him around, firstly, what are your processes and procedures? How are you engaging in training and counseling and developing this employee for the role? And so they went to CCMA, but eventually they had to pay out. But that was a learning curve for them around, let me now look at making sure that my management team understands what they need to deliver. If I have a new employee on board, that they're trained effectively, they get the necessary counseling and guidance, and then they can deliver.
Right. I'm not sure about other people in the room, but sometimes I find it difficult to explain to a small business owner why it is so important to spend energy and time on making sure that those things are all in order. Even if they sometimes end at a place like the CCMA, they may not see the value of that. So that would be an interesting thing. And perhaps if there are people in the room, Greg, Johan, Louise, Miriam, Pilate, Seba King, any of you that have experience in working with businesses that are resisting doing the proper thing in terms of employment. And I think Cynthia has put it out very clearly for us. I really like the way, by the way, Cynthia, that you describe starting off with culture and making sure that you understand what it is that you represent and the people that you attract into your business being congruent to that culture. And you have a phrase, I wouldn't, if you don't mind, I'll quote you on saying, diversity of people, are you looking for diversity of people but not of values? That sounds like something you can put on the wall, sort of. So that's a big takeaway for me here today. We'll come back to you just now, perhaps with more questions. But let's, before we move on to Meshack, let's do another poll. Let's ask everyone in the room to see if they can give an indication here. So if you are working with small businesses as a business advisor or a supporter in some or the other way, would you collaborate with a consultant working as HR specialist if you are not a specialist in that specific field? So it may be that you're generalist and you're not focusing on HR at all. Would you work with someone? Would you call in someone, even if it means that your fees are going to be split and you have to share it with someone else? Or even if you are in HR and you're a specialist in the field that needs attention, would it be easy for you to say, let me call someone else? Or would you try to resolve the issues yourself? Maybe put your research hat on and go Google a bit to find the solutions that you can outside of your field of expertise. See, there's some activity there of people voting. So we'll keep it open for a moment. In the meantime, Meshack, I'll unmute you so that you're ready to get going. So I'm going to give it another second or so for people to vote. So going, gone. And then, yes, most of us, close to half of us say, yes, I'm familiar with the requirements, but it's a tricky field that requires expertise and therefore you'll be working with someone else. And then a good third says that, yes, I know very little about introducing HR systems and approaches and therefore you'll use someone else. Only, I think, one person that said no. So I think there's awareness in the room that this is a tricky field. In fact, it can be costly for a business if you get it wrong, because you have to pay out. If you get it too wrong, you'll end up at the CCMA, or worst cases, even at the Labour Court. By the way, Cynthia, what is the difference between the CCMA and the Labour Court?
So a CCMA is really where they have conciliation and mediation. It's really the first stages where they try to get agreement between the parties and have a conciliation process and then a mediation process. And then the Labour Court is where there's no agreement. And then the aggrieved party decides to proceed to Labour Court.
But more costly and...
Yes, it's a lot more costly, yes.
You try to prevent that. Even you try to prevent the CCMA, but you try to prevent the Labour Court at all costs.
Yes, and I think it's really important that this is why I always encourage founders to start thinking about the quality and the type of people you want to entice and have in your business, because ultimately they're the ambassadors for your business. They're going to take it forward for you.
Yeah. Great. So let's shift gear a bit from the perspective of someone that's received help. Cynthia will stay with us in a room. I'm sure there's still going to be more for us to talk about. And Meshack, if I can bring you in. So you in fact previously worked in corporate, in pension funds, and as a chartered accountant, nogals.
Yeah.
From that to running your own business.
Yes. So I was at corporate and I left. And now running my own business. So I've always wanted to run my own business. So the time was right. 4 years post my article. So 7 years experience in corporate, then I decided to leave. Yeah.
Okay, so you've got some things to share with us, so maybe we can allow you to do so. By the way, the very interesting story, of course, is of entrepreneurs that start their businesses based on something they experienced themselves. So I think you're going to cover that perhaps in your story too.
Yes.
And you didn't start off thinking about HR because you were at the CCMA, so maybe there's something for us to learn about that too. But let's not keep you from sharing what you have to share.
Yeah, great. Thanks. So I run a business called Kaelo Black Beauty. Initially started off as a doll business, making dolls, African dolls to cater for African kids. It started off as a project for my daughter. There was not enough in the market to that represented African children. So we started off in 2016. We have 8 full-time employees, 7 part-time. So the running on the business side of things, I was very familiar with in terms of making sure your ideas is protected, making sure that you have the right partners. In partnership with E-Squared, which is our funder. We closed a couple of deals with the retailers in terms of distribution. So that was quite nice. And also, of course, because we make toys for kids, so we had to make sure the safety is looked after. So we have safety certificates, especially on the doll side, given the materials that's used with Intertech on the international side. Locally, we partnership with SAVA, South African Vinyl Association. We are a member there. And of course, my experience being a CA, there was a bit of marketing that I remember from varsity that helped us to get exposure, especially on social media, which gave us quite a lot of traction. And of course, be there for the interviews, be there for the newspaper, that's free exposure. So what we decided to do, there are a couple of brands that we were working with in the background, but the one that's most people wouldn't know is called the Mahle brand. Mahle is a Zulu word meaning beautiful. In this brand, we started off with the Black African dolls. This is the range that we have. The dolls are designed to inspire African children to love who they are and accept how they look in an effort to build some self-esteem and some self-confidence, just to make sure that that part is covered. Because when you grow up and enter corporate and do a whole lot of amazing things, if your self-esteem from childhood is not solid, that's going to affect you whether you like it or not. So we're trying to take care of that at the early stage. There's some research that I read that by the time the child is about 6 years old, their personality is already formed, it's already intact. So everything that comes after that, they're pretty much just on autopilot of what they think of themselves between the age of 2 and 6. So it's quite important to influence that stage. Under the Mahle brand, we also have school bags. This we launched last year. We're actually quite surprised by the interest that we're getting on the school bags. So it's a normal school bags, but what we decided to do is to add the real 3D accessories. So the braids and the afro that you see on the bag are actually real items. And kids can kind of relate to it in terms of the hairstyle. They relate to their own hairstyle. So that's going quite well. We also have the hair care. We decided to enter into the hair care market on the next slide. Because we quickly realized if we're telling kids to love who you are and how you look, we also need to teach you how to look after your hair. There's very limited products and limited information in the market on how to look after the ethnic hair. So we decided to go into that market by default. So our roadmap, it's a lot of things that we want to do. So from the investor side, they are fully supporting us to go into animation. So this moves our company a little bit away from just being a doll company or just being a toy company to become pretty much a content company. So we're trying to build, just to give an idea in terms of something you're familiar with, trying to build an African Disney. So we're gonna create content, we're gonna do moving picture, which is animation, and then we'll create merchandise from this moving picture. We also haven't forgotten about the boys. We get that question quite a lot. So we created a character called Captain Africa. There we want to instill the values of the boys, being proud of who they are, having the values of protect the ladies. You need to know what it is to be an African and be a man of character, a man of integrity. In light of what we're seeing in our country of women violence and gender-based violence, we think we can actually influence and keep that curve at the early stage. Yeah, so that's pretty much our roadmap. It's more on the content and delivering that. So that's us. You can follow us on our social media. We're quite active on social media. Our handle is Take Mahle Home Friday. You can also check out our website on kaeloblackbeauty.co.za, or you can text our WhatsApp number that's on the screen. Thank you very much. Yeah, just on the HR side.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, just on the HR side. So that was a bit of a sales pitch. Just on the HR side, so Cynthia has helped us quite a lot. So we were, for about 2 years, we were just a small business, pretty much running with friends and family. No formal process in place. And then we signed the contracts with the retailers, and we realized we had to get more resources of people that are actually skilled to perform those roles. That's when I approached Cynthia. I was like, I need help. I don't know where to start. And then she helped me quite a lot. I think when she spoke about culture, that was very, very important, because as an entrepreneur, most of these things are in your head. So how do you translate them into paper so that people can actually follow and get to understand the organization and figure out where it's going? That transition for most entrepreneurs, so for people who haven't run a business, it's quite a tricky one to move from employing a family member to employing somebody you're not related to. The process you need to go through, you definitely need guidance from the HR expert, and Cynthia was quite helpful in that area.
It's the crucial mistake of not unmuting myself when I want to speak. So Meshack, that first point that Cynthia raised around attracting the right people, we don't always think of that as one of the most key areas of employment, and making sure that you have a healthy team of people working together. So when you say you learned about using culture and so on, how did that happen for you? And if you think back to the way that Cynthia helped you, what in the way that she introduced that to you made it easy for you to take on board?
Yeah, I think two things. So one is attracting the right kind of expertise that you need in your business. And Cynthia touched on it a bit there, that you sometimes don't have the resources to pay them. So she guided us quite a lot that there's more that you can offer than money. I know investor echo the same thing. So you need to sell the vision. You need to sell where the company is going. You need to sell what you're trying to build, which is very tricky for entrepreneurs, especially for introverts. I'm a bit of an introvert. That everything is in my head, and communicating is such a pretty much, words are just too much. So it does help to actually put everything on paper in terms of vision, in terms of where the company is going, and that helps you buy into the skills that you need, even though you can afford them. You do need to set aside some ownership. I wouldn't advise anything more than 10%, probably 10% for staff. just for them to know that they're getting in at pretty much sometimes lower than what they would make in corporate, but they'll get the upside when the business grows and actually becomes successful. So Cynthia also helped quite a lot. It's just nicer to have an echoing voice. As an entrepreneur, you're running very hard and you're running very fast. And the last thing you're actually thinking about, which you should be thinking about, is HR and how the culture of the organization is communicated, and are people understanding it? Do people know the process? Do people know the job spec? I mean, she spoke about job spec. I was like, oh yeah, I need to do that. Because you just know what needs to be done. You just bring a person in, but they're not fully aware as to exactly what's expected of them. So just having that expert voice, just to prompt you, say, what about this? What about that? What about that?
So if I hear you right, and I can just check in with you, so she didn't come and say, I've got all the solutions and yeah, go from A to Z.
No, she didn't. She actually really tried to understand the business, which was very, very nice. I like that. She actually gave me time to actually explain what we do and where we're trying to go. Pretty much, she let me do what I should be doing with the new employees, explaining the culture of the business, explaining the vision of the business, explain to me exactly how do I see my business now versus in a year, 10 years time. And then she offered advice and expertise after pretty much learning what the need is in the business. So that was quite helpful.
So, Cynthia, are you conscious about that method in supporting entrepreneurs? If you can unmute, you can maybe talk a bit about that too. I saw your shake of your head, but everyone didn't see that. Shall I help you unmute quickly?
Okay. Yes, absolutely. My approach is always a partnership approach, and to offer an effective solution in terms of HR, you have to understand the business. You need to have insight into what is a strategy, what is a vision, what even is the character and qualities of the person that you're working with. And that helps you overall to advise, to guide, to make recommendations and support the business. So I believe in a co-creative, collaborative approach always.
Yeah. I suppose that's a lesson for everyone of us. Doesn't matter which area it is, whether it's HR or not. But while we're talking about HR, and by the way, if there is someone in the room, it is Sani, it's the first time I see your name, Lucky, I Siva, know you well, Cholofelo, any of you that maybe want to come into the room and share your experience about dealing with a client that has HR issues, we can bring you in the room to talk. You can show your face if you want to. You just need to raise your hand. You can see there's a button that says raise your hand, and we can bring you into the room if you would like to share that. That's quite a nice way of participating too. Or if you have learned something that you want to share, you may in fact be an HR specialist yourself too. But while we talk about small business, Cynthia, so you mentioned specifically with the Employment Equity Act that there's that 50 employee level. There's of course also the bargaining councils that if you go into a certain level that you need to take account, and for skills levies, small businesses are exempted. So there are quite a few provisions for small businesses in our employment system that perhaps we should be aware of, even if we don't know the detail. Can you just perhaps explain a bit more about that, sort of at what size or what becomes important for us to note in dealing with our businesses? So a lot of small businesses are, of course, really small. They're like 5 or less people. But some would be going into the space where knowing what kind of provisions are starting to apply to them, or some may even be unaware that they're exempted and trying to comply to things that they don't really need to.
Okay, so bargaining council will apply to mainly companies that have a union. So if you don't really have a union, most employees, if they agree, would then go directly to CCMA. So the Skills Development Act, thank you for reminding me about that. It's so basically with skills development starts from your performance review and then having a development plan for your employee, as well as what your training budget is, so that when you then submit, you pay a levy to the CETAs, especially for skills development, and out of that you get a return, which also then contributes towards your triple BE score card. So so with skills development, you want to also start developing, and remember, skills development does not necessarily have to be paying for formal interventions. It's things like job rotation, it's learning on the job new skills, it's all of that. You just keep a training record of, even if you did a presentation or on, for example, how you handle conflict, or teaching your sales staff how to market and sell the product. You want to keep records of all of that, because whoever it is that's presenting that, a portion of the rate per hour will be calculated using their current salary, and all of that then contributes towards skills development.
Yeah, and in the case of Meshack, your business, so you went from a family business where you didn't worry about these things at all, because you were all family members, some working for free, I suppose, at some point in time. How did that work out for you? Was it a big shift? So perhaps, sort of, because as you say, being a CA by training and being naturally more systems orientated, you weren't scared to take on these things. But what would you say? Sort of, so you've had the experience of working with a consultant. If you would give other consultants advice in terms of making it easier for a business that is going in that growth stage, going out of the family business into employing people and starting to put some systems in place, what advice would you give the practitioner, the consultant that is supporting that business, to make it easier for both parties to get a good result?
Yeah, so I think you're right. The background of the owner of the business does come handy. So for me, I'm a numbers person, so system does make sense. For me, it was about an expert is coming in, they advise me on what to do to make sure that I can run my business effectively. So I was not resistant to it. So I think for a practitioner, it is quite important to spend time with the entrepreneur and get to understand them. So I mean, if they're not system-based person, try and explain the benefits for them to do it. Outside, making sure, the biggest benefit is the fact that your employee is well taken care of, your employee is onboarded properly and everything is followed properly. But it's also taking a headache away from the business owner. So as a practitioner, you can come from a perspective that I want to take care of things that you don't have to worry about, so that you can run your business effectively. Yeah. And then from a business owner side, I think for me, even when it was still a family business, we always wanted to create value for our customer and value for the people that work for us. So it was also doing right by people. So we're not trying to do the bare minimum. We're trying to make sure that things are taken care of, to make sure that the employees are well taken care of.
Yeah. And in going through that process, you found that there were some appropriate and some less appropriate systems. Would it be possible to give some reflection on that process that you went through to find the right kind of system, so that is not erroneous and take your focus off what you really need to do in your business, but that actually is helpful and easy to manage?
Yeah, so I think it also depends. It depends what the business is. So it depends on the size of the business, the revenue, and the numbers of people that are working for you. So there are cost implications that are involved. But for me, I'm an entrepreneur, so I take the advice of the experts in the HR system. So if they do advise something, I look at the business and say, okay, maybe this cost is a bit too much for the business. What plan B can we use, or can we implement it into place? But for me, I always took the practitioner advice as a way to help me not stress about certain things, so that I can focus on the business.
So Cynthia, when you gave that advice on introducing new systems, what can the rest of us learn from that, the approach that you took there, or in other contexts too? So when you get to the point where the entrepreneur says, yes, I need to make some changes here, otherwise I'm going to run into trouble, there's choice, because there seems to be so many choices. It's really intimidating. If let's say you open Google and you type in HR system South Africa, you get a real headache just trying to see what all the things are that are available.
Yes, that's very true. So basically, the first step is for me is to understand the needs of the business. then once I'm clear on what the business needs, I would then look at what is simple, practical, and can be customized. If you can customize a system, and also that it needs to be cost effective. And if you can customize and tailor a system, and also if there are simple ways that the entrepreneur can just, at a click of a button, make relevant changes himself or herself without having to contact an expert or outsource the system, etc. Those are the factors that I take into consideration. And then I would then review vendors, sit with them, explain the context, what I think needs to be delivered, whether it's a payroll functionality or a performance management functionality, or if it's just analytics, what is it that we need, how can it be customized, and then from there work with the vendor or make a recommendation, and then sit with the entrepreneur and have a discussion. And also, there needs to be some relevance to what's going to happen long term in the business, and then can I adapt the system to meet that need long term.
Yeah, so you don't have to change over in a few months' time or a year's time. I know there's no magic number because every situation is different, but is there a level of revenue or of staff members where if you're below that actually a manual paper-based system makes more sense?
So I would say in my experience below 10. Below 10, you can, 8 around there, you can manage it as part of a team. But then when it starts becoming more than that, and you also start to see that you have plans where your business is going to get on new clients and you're going to need more staff to manage that, you want to then think around whether it's a function you can outsource, what would be the cost of that, or do you actually need a temporary staff member or a permanent one? Yeah.
Great. I've got one question here, and if there are any other attendees that still have a question, you'll have to put it down very quickly because we're running out of time. It's funny how if you learn a lot and have fun, then the hour is too short. Eh? But so the question is, by the way, so please add any more. I think we can take one more question perhaps in the time that we have. But the question is, how will you choose between implementing a system versus the outsourcing of HR functions? So I think that system is an internal system. So perhaps the first part of the question is, what is outsourcing HR about? And then the second part of the question, if I need to decide in my small business, do I create the internal capacity to deal with all the HR issues, or what are the things that I can outsource to not have to create it myself?
Okay, so this is really important in terms of thinking about what does your business need. If you have a smaller number of employees and you want to make sure there are processes and procedures in place, there's governance and compliance, and you need advice. You might have a case where an employee is off sick constantly, for example, and you need advice how to deal with that, or you want to implement a performance review system. Then it's recommending you can outsource, and then you want to look at what is the level of expertise that you're getting as compared to having an internal resource. Is it affordable for my business? Do I need a full-time resource? Because once you get to having 50 employees, for example, you want to then think, do I need a full-time resource who can manage all HR functions? Or do I need, or is it more practical? So for example, I am currently outsourced to a company that have 45 employees, and we had to sit down and look at realistically to run a fully fledged HR service for your business. How much of time am I spending, working on systems and implementing processes, procedures, and bringing in new policies versus what are the projects that you want to bring on board. So for example, you want to review remuneration, that's a separate project. Or if you want to have an audit done or BBE function done, from an HR perspective, how much of time that takes, and can we run that as a project? So there's a lot you want to consider versus outsourcing and internal. So an internal employee, the benefit is that you have more consistency, and it might cost you more or not. So there's a lot of different variables that you would have to consider.
Yeah. So I've got a last question from my side.
Sure.
If I'm a generalist, there are a lot of generalists in the room that are supporting entrepreneurs in various ways. If I find it's now time to seriously take a look at HR, what is the best way that I can, with my client, develop a brief or something that will allow an HR specialist to easily engage with it? And I think we can then start wrap up our discussion here today. So maybe there may also be a final thought also from you, Meshack, just now, a final thought that you would like to leave with everyone in the room. But let's start with that question, Cynthia. So how do we prepare as generalists when we want to approach an HR specialist?
Okay, so you want to start first with understanding the business needs and what are the business needs from an HR perspective. And then from there you can unpack. So it's because HR starts literally from the time you start thinking, I need to expand and grow my business. What then are my needs in terms of staffing needs? And then from there, what other HR systems do I need to have in place? So I usually would encourage a generalist to start having that conversation, especially in terms of what is the strategy for my business and how is that going to impact the people that I'm bringing into my business, and then what typically are your needs from that.
Great. So I'll come back to you just now for final thought, but maybe you can, Meshack, if you can share from the perspective of the client, and your participation here is much appreciated, by the way, because you're ultimately what it's about. What would your final comments be, considering that the rest of the people in the room are all business advisors?
Yeah. I'll say probably just realize that there's probably the need is there for HR services for small businesses. I think I've never been to CSCMA. I cannot imagine how time consuming the process is. And as an entrepreneur, time is actually worth much more than money. So as HR practitioner, I think do approach small business even when they're still small. And then sell it to them as something that will save you time. Because if you don't do it and you don't do it right, as an entrepreneur, it's going to cost you time. And it might cost you money. Money is fine, but time is the biggest issue, because time you can actually make more money. So I think the need is there for small businesses. We might be resistant to it, but if you sell it as this will save you time, down the road, that makes sense for us. We talk about time as entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Great, thank you very much, and also for being inspiring in the way that you may not think about it in that way, but to hear the story of an entrepreneur that started something as a family business and something that creates social impact and cohesion. So that's really good to hear, and I'm sure you, with that story and the culture you create, are creating the space to attract the right kind of people that will never think of ending up at the CCMA in any case.
Yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me, and this was great.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Cynthia, so maybe a last thought of you before we go over to the IBASA specific issues.
So thank you also very much for the opportunity to be part of this process. A last thought for me is, wherever there are people, it's really important to have the conversation with your businesses around how are they managing their people, what type of culture they're bringing to their business, and how are you taking care of your people? That's really, for me, most important, because when you have HR processes and in place, what they create for people is a sense of belonging. And when people have a sense of belonging, then they are motivated. They really want to create for you and contribute towards your business. That's my last one.
Great. No, thank you very much. So if we want to make contact with you, you can please, Cynthia, and you too, Meshack, just type your contact details in the text chat. Make sure you send it to all panelists and attendees so that everyone in the room can see how to make contact with you. And then we'll be moving over to IBASA specific issues, both for IBASA members and for those that are thinking of becoming members. We are in a profession and we are professionalizing our business advising is viewed and practiced. But perhaps before we do so, just have a look at the text chat. You'll find there a link that you can click, which is the same link that is on the screen now, for you to give us feedback on how we can make these CPD webinars more meaningful for you, meeting your needs. It's a way for you to give us input on future topics too. And talking of future topics, on January 23rd, we will be having our January webinar. And the topic there will be how to assist your client to develop and implement a growth plan. It is a requirement in the enterprise and supply development codes, and also in many business development programs, you'll find that a growth plan is an element that is being required. So that's a really practical webinar on how to do growth plans and make sure it works. And thanks, Cynthia and Meshack, for typing your contact details there. Great, shall we move over to Lusona? And I see Derek's not in the room any longer. I'm not sure if something happened there, but Lusona, if you can. Is Derek still there? He must switch on his camera though, if he is.
8:39.
Hi, Lusona.
Hi, Christoph. Hello to my fellow panelists. Wonderful, wonderful feedback. And I'm 100% sure that a lot of business advisors, as well as businesses, have definitely benefited from the HR issues raised. I know that our country has some challenges when it comes to labor. We recently had the issue with SAA, where labor was one of the key issues that has perhaps led SAA to go into business rescue, taking into consideration other factors. And even though we have a wonderful constitution and how the Basic Conditions of Employment Act enables businesses to be compliant, you do get sometimes misunderstandings. And what's important in business is that that misunderstanding must not begin to cost you money. So I believe this is a very important topic, especially for businesses, because you need people in your business to make your business work and to become profitable. From an IBASA side, I definitely know that when it comes to being able to implement, it is key for business advisors to be able to advise correctly, as well as ensure that the relevant information for the business gets communicated in the right way. IBASA has been embarked on many things in November. We have been invited to a national discussion that was being held by the Department of Small Business, as well as CEDA, as well as the service CETA, speaking on the exciting topic of what it means to become a business advisor within the ecosystem of South Africa. So we have been representing our members, and the debate is open for members to continue to provide feedback to the Department of Small Business. The closing date is the 10th of December. What that really is the discussion paper that deals with business advisory services. And why do you as a business advisor need to read that discussion paper, as well as the policy that the Department of Small Business has proposed? It's because it will impact you. How will it impact you, you may ask? It will simply impact you by virtue of certain services that you'll be able to provide to the public sector, as well as the definitions that they will be giving for certain services. As IBASA, you are well aware that we've long been advocating for the professionalization of business advising. So all sectors that give business advice in any form should really take a keen interest in providing feedback on this paper. You will note that the document that is available on our website, as well as the Department of Small Businesses website, has a deadline date that has passed. So we can inform you with confidence, because we were at the stakeholder engagement, that the deadline of the 28th of November has been moved to the 10th of December. So have your say in the policy discussion so that you are not feeling left out when certain decisions are made. On another note, IBASA will only be able to give feedback on certain operational developments in this coming week. So I know we're giving an opportunity to the board to be able to communicate officially with members with regards to certain operational activities. And we will certainly ensure that you get that communication via newsletter. Most importantly, from our side, I'd like to take this opportunity to wish all our members as well as the public a wonderful festive season and a Merry Christmas. It's a bit wet on the roads, so do be safe. But overall, we look forward to seeing you in January again, where we can share and collaborate. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Lusona. So just to remind everyone that everyone on the webinar, by the way, is not a IBASA member, but those are welcome. And thanks to IBASA for offering this free learning event to those that aren't even members. But perhaps, Carl, we can go to the screen share and we can just cover the issues of how to become a member. There's a fee that you pay on application for administration and for the assessment to be done for you, which will then determine your annual subscription fee to be a member of IBASA. And thanks for reminding us, Lusona, around the process of professionalization driven by, amongst others, the Department of Small Business Development. So to be part of this profession is definitely going to become easier being a member of a professional body such as IBASA. So those of you that haven't joined, please do so. And the others, remember to renew yours when the time comes. I think that's about it for us. Or are there some other issues that we need to cover? Yeah, quickly.
Yes, and this is also a reminder that we are submitting CPD submissions for all our members. As you know, to be compliant as a member, you do need to submit your CPD hours. And that's one of the reasons why once a month, IBASA sponsors one free hour in which you can participate and learn and count that towards your CPD points. The deadline is the 10th of December. However, and another extension has been offered to members because December gets busy. It has been extended to the 31st of January. We do want to implore our members to take this time to make sure that they become compliant. Matters of CPD are a serious matter, and we do look forward to you completing your manual submission. So don't miss this deadline, but most importantly, take advantage of the extension, take advantage of the holiday break to make sure that you can submit on time on the 31st of January 2020. So yes, the year has come to an end, and we're excited. We're looking forward to 2020.
Great. So we do too, and our next event is on the 23rd of January. You'll get notice about that, looking at growth plans. So everyone, if you travel for holidays, please do so safely and cautiously, and have fun with the family and friends. Come back rejuvenated next year so that we can really put this task that we have in supporting entrepreneurs at the forefront and contribution to growing our economy and our country and the well-being of the people around us to a good extent too. Bye-bye everyone, and thanks again to Cynthia and Meshack for participating today. Thanks Lusona for your input, and pity Derek fell off, but next time we can maybe bring you. Bye-bye everyone, have a good Thursday afternoon.
Bye-bye.